You're tuned in to Inside Lowell. Inside Lowell podcast brought to you in part by Washington Savings Bank, serving the greater Lowell community for over 130 years. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. Unicare, offering a variety of plans for people insured under the GIC. At Unicare, your health is their top priority. Reverie 73, Lowell's #1 cannabis shop. Elevate your cannabis experience at Reverie 73. Hafner's, heating and cooling homes and businesses for nearly a century. Become a part of the Hafner's family. It kicks. Boston North Company, offering a wide variety of business solutions to help restaurant and retail clients save money. Boston North. And by Mahoney Oil Company, providing warmth and protection to families in Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. That's Mahoney Oil. And now, time for another Inside Lowell podcast. Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the Inside Lowell studios here in beautiful downtown Lowell, Massachusetts. Getting close to the Christmas season here. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, December 19th. So we figured we'd give you a little early Christmas present, a visit from our Congresswoman here in Lowell and the 3rd Congressional District in Massachusetts. Lori Trahan is joining us here in studios. Good morning, Congresswoman. How are you?
I'm great, Teddy. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to have you here. It strikes me you were here kind of around the same time last year when I asked you about your Christmas shopping. And you said you had to leave here and scramble to get it done, but you don't even have time to do that today. You've got another media appearance, right? So where are we? Have we gotten the holiday shopping done?
We're almost there. We're almost there. I'm feeling a little bit better about it this year than I did last year. But this has been an aggressive year in Washington, like in terms of being there, not in terms of getting a lot done. But that always takes a toll when you're not home that much. I'm a bit behind, but you know what? It always works out. The presents will be under the tree. Somehow it will get done.
Santa Claus will show up at the Trahan household, which is good. You mentioned the year and a busy year. I just got a glimpse at some of those numbers. This morning, your staff released an end of the year report, which, by the way, is a tremendous production from a graphical standpoint and information. So kudos to whoever put that together. But there's a bunch of stuff that jumped out at me. Let me give our audience a couple of these numbers. So you filed 9 bills. I'm curious how that ranks with a typical year for you, but this is what jumped out. 1,827 constituent requests for assistance were closed. In other words, dealt with and resolved in one way or another. That's about 5 per day. I did that math in my head all by my lonesome. This one I needed the calculator for. 21,200 emails or phone calls answered, about 58 a day. Yeah. Now, you're not getting to all of them yourself, but that's a lot of work. Yeah. For your staff. They're basically responding, forget the big ticket stuff that we hear about on CNN and Fox and whatever. Yeah. You're responding to everyday, I don't want to call them little issues, but issues that directly deal with your constituents. Yeah. And how do you pull it off?
Well, thank you for that. And thanks for thumbing through our report. It does take a fair amount of effort to compile that, but it's an important thing to do because I think at the end of the day, we want elected officials to be accountable. That's the best way for me to show the folks that I've got the privilege to represent, what we've been up to and what we've accomplished. So, when I think about folks who call the office, it's kind of in 2 buckets, right? There are folks who call because they feel very strongly about something we're working on in Washington, whether it's what we're debating on the floor or legislation that they want to see passed. And so there's like a policy response that goes along and an update in terms of, what's doable and where that issue is in the docket. But then, and my district office team is incredible. You pick up the phone and you call because you need a passport or, you have plane reservations and you just looked at your passport and it's expired, or you haven't gotten your social security check and there's like some glitch because maybe you moved or you changed your name or whatever it might be. Those are the ones where when we can resolve those goes quickly, and it impacts someone's life directly and critically. So, we have 18 people who work around the clock on a whole host of issues, and that's what makes us able to produce a report like this.
I was going to ask you, what are these calls typically about? I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to give you their opinion on Middle East policy or inflation or whatever, but I'm going to guess there's little things that may not seem like a big deal to me or somebody else, but to the person involved.
Oh, yeah.
So passport issues.
Yeah. So on the constituent services side, right? Somebody might not have gotten their veterans benefits. A veteran may have passed away, and they want the formalities that go with a burial. Folks may call because their immigration case is stuck and it's just taking too long. We get a lot of those. We get a lot of phone calls from municipalities, boards of select boards on the implementation of these laws that we've passed, right? How do they apply? Like what's being offered? Like what is the latest funding opportunity for their town? So it really does have a broad spectrum in terms of how we respond. And then you're right, on the legislative side, it's the things that you read about in the paper, all the headlines, but then it's also there could be a bill in committee or maybe even not a bill in my committee around like the humane treatment of animals, or a big one for Massachusetts retirees is the windfall protection. It's WPGPO, and basically it's like it's a tweak that needs to be made so that Massachusetts retirees, public service retirees, can still get their Social Security even though they get a pension, or their survivor gets their benefits. So it really does run on a long range of issues, and some of them are big that you would identify with, and some of them are very just personal that affects a small group or smaller group of people's lives.
Are those personal ones the easiest to solve, or can they be the most difficult at times?
Yes, sometimes they can be really difficult because if there isn't a lot of attention, then there isn't a lot of public opinion around something, then that can get crowded out of just the legislative priority. And so sometimes for a more obscure issue or one that impacts a smaller group of people, you really do have to go to bat. You've got to go and talk to the chairman of the committee. You got to go talk to your own leadership. You got to go talk to the Republicans who actually have the gavels and say, what can we do to get a hearing on this or make progress on it? So, it's really incredible. Even when I read the report and then kind of dig underneath in terms of all the metrics that we follow, what the issues are that kind of surface that people care about.
So 9 bills filed. How does that rank in your 5-year tenure? There's about the norm, or?
Yeah. So I think when we were in the majority, I was able to file a lot more and have a lot more progress on bills. But I think where some people in my own caucus were surprised, when we lost the majority, that they would have to start working with Republicans to get important pieces of legislation or things that, were important to their district done. We didn't have to do that. We've sort of used our time, even in the last 4 years, to strengthen our relationships with Republicans on our committee. And so that's put me in a good position to get those bills filed with the Republican co-lead so that we can, move them out of committee and onto the floor. So we're proud of that. It's hard to do when you don't control the agenda. But we've been able to be successful because of those relationships.
You mentioned committees. 5 years in now, going into your 6th year, you've started to climb those leadership ranks, and you've gotten a couple of important assignments that I know they've been important to you, but you're also, it's quite an achievement. You're part of the leadership committee now, are you not?
I am. So, the first one that was really important was this Regional Leadership Council, which I was appointed to at the beginning of the year. And that's really designed to help with implementing, the infrastructure bill, right? Like, it's a huge bill. And we want to make sure that Massachusetts gets its fair share. We want to make sure the Rook Bridge gets its $180 million so that it gets built. quickly. And so that is important because even when you're in the minority, you can still work on implementation and making sure that communities have access to those funds. But the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee is just the one I just ran for in the caucus and won, and that's sitting directly at the leadership table, which is two things. One, I want to make sure that people know going into an election year the difference, the contrast between what Democrats do when they're in charge and what Republicans did this year, right? I mean, this was a frustrating Congress because, we were just embroiled in dysfunction and chaos. We had multiple speaker votes brought to the brink on the debt ceiling, and then a government shutdown, and then more speaker votes. And the result of that is, families like the one I grew up in get hurt when government doesn't work, when we're not actually advancing policies that matter to them. So being part of the messaging team so that folks know that as they go and cast their ballots next year, I think is important and something that is I want to spend my time on. But then on the flip side, making sure that Massachusetts has another seat at the table. It's always good for our state when I can join Catherine Clark, who is our number 2 Democrat down in Washington, Chairman Richie Neal, Chairman Jim McGovern, to make sure that we're continuing to have big wins for Massachusetts. The DoD Microelectronics Commons Grant, which is huge. UMass Lowell is going to be central to that. ARPA-H, where all the innovation in healthcare is going to be situated here in Massachusetts, all the way to the Sagamore Bridge. I mean, I talk about the Rook Bridge because that's the bridge I care about, but it is important that, we get the funding that we need to replace the Sagamore Bridge. So, having more Massachusetts people at the leadership table will impact, how we work as a delegation. Yeah,
I wonder if the public at large understands that leadership, especially on some of these key committees, really sets the agenda. And I hearken back to, locally here when Steve Panagiotakis, then senator, became chairman of Ways and Means in the Senate, or folks in Haverhill know very well how they benefited from Brian Dempsey being chairman of Ways and Means in the House. That's really important for bringing home the money, which ultimately is what I view the job of a congressperson. The senators kind of deal with treaties and that kind of fun stuff and other things, but the congressmen and women need to really bring that money home for their district and determine what the key needs are. Yeah. So what are your priorities in 2024? What's the goal? What are you hoping to accomplish from a legislative standpoint?
Well, one, I have been, because, when you're in the minority and you don't get to set the agenda, there are just natural constraints, which is why my team and I are focused on implementation, right? So we work hand in glove with our municipalities, with our city managers, our town managers, making sure that they have access to all the funding that's coming to the state and directly to their communities, right? We did that with the American Rescue Plan dollars. We're doing that with the infrastructure money, the CHIPS and Science money, even the Inflation Reduction Act, making sure that they understand the tax benefits, in that bill. So we're going to continue to work on implementation. I think that is a big reason for our success in getting so many funds back to the 3rd Congressional District, is because we've kind of pivoted and really focused our attention there. I mean, nationally, I do want to make sure we do everything in our power to win back the House. We have to, finish the job in terms of what we started, making sure that we're investing in bringing manufacturing and jobs back to the United States is a huge issue and something that Democrats started, and we want to continue. Making sure that we're bringing down the cost of healthcare, making sure that we have safe communities, and frankly, making sure we have more paths to the middle class, right? I mean, that's what this is all about. That's what people in this district care about. And Democrats have a great track record and a great story to tell. Legislatively, we have had a few wins this year in our committee. I just got through the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Youth Poisoning Prevention Act, which is obscure unless you've lived through it. But there are online suicide forums that actually promote consumers' access to a poison that young people are using to die by suicide. And it is heartbreaking when you talk to a family whose, child is having suicide ideation, and instead of putting into the Google search box, and getting help, they're actually, being encouraged and given the means, So we just passed a bill through committee to just stop that poison from being accessible to consumers. It might have commercial uses, and we will continue that, but no more selling it on Amazon or other sites. And I'm excited to work with Republicans on that. Also, fusion. You hear me talk a lot about the future of energy. We have Commonwealth Fusion Systems in Devens, which is on the cusp of commercializing fusion energy, which is literally limitless, carbon-free, cost-efficient energy source. And the Fusion Energy Act is something that will actually streamline the process so that they can continue hitting their milestones and bringing that to market. So, we're working on a few issues with Republicans that we think have a lot of promise of passing on the floor. And then big picture, we want to get back to making sure that childcare is more affordable, that we're, implementing the things that we've done in the last 2 years well, and the money comes to the third.
It's interesting you mentioned the fusion thing, because while everybody fights over fossil fuels and either solar or wind, people in the know tell me the future is either carbon capture technologies or fusion. How close are we to that being a fusion energy, at least being a realistic?
Yeah, so I remember when I was a staffer, this was pie in the sky stuff. It always felt like it was, just, way far on the horizon. But, our labs, our private companies that have really taken incredible investment into their technologies, they have hit milestones that really put us a lot closer. Just with the Commonwealth Fusion Systems in Devens, they're hoping to have their demonstration plan up and running in 2025. That is going to be incredible. Not only for the jobs and like the ecosystem that it's going to create around producing that, but also like energy, we will get off of this volatile market that is oil and gas, and we will move closer to having cost-effective energy for the whole world, right? I mean, if you once you crack this nut, it is going to be limitless, no hazardous byproducts. I mean, it is going to be game-changing. And so ever since I came to Congress, I have been about putting federal investments into making sure that we can accelerate that path, making sure that our regulatory environment is conducive to having these startups and this technology come to market faster. So huge proponent. I want to see the United States win. We've got great technologies here in the United States, but China is investing billions, the UK and Japan also investing billions. And it's a bit of a race, which, as you know, Teddy, I like a good competition. So I really want to see us win.
All right. All these priorities you talked about, they're at risk because of politics. 2024 is an election year, and you've got it all, right? Control of the House, control of the Senate, control of the White House in the offing. And it looks like you're going to start the year with an impeachment case. You've spoken out strongly against the efforts to run an impeachment against President Biden. That said, are you willing to sit and at least listen objectively to evidence that is presented by...
You have no evidence. I mean, if they have evidence to present, yes. But they have been at this for months. And look, they vowed to, establish an impeachment inquiry ever since January 6th, right? I mean, it's if there was evidence, if there were witnesses, if there was any sort of sniff at wrongdoing, of course, but the burden is on them to produce it. And I think the thing that is most frustrating is this Congress under Republican control has really devolved into chaos. And when you are a productive person and you want to work with folks to solve problems, we have a lot of problems ahead of us globally in our own country. And we're not stopping the rhetoric from seeping in, the extremism from seeping in to say, hey, let's just work together on this. You have a 4-seat majority. Now it's down to 2. The only way things get done in a divided Congress is if people come together and they put the people that they represent over the campaign and electoral politics. And that's just not happening. So, yeah, if they produce evidence, of course, we'll take a look.
So I assume that becomes part of it. They have to produce evidence. My understanding is that there are people who have emails, texts, and some have gone on TV interviews as far back as 2020, right before the election, and talked about money being siphoned from the president's son to the president while he was vice president and who knows beyond. If that type of evidence pops up, are you willing to admit that there's or at least it's presented and how it plays out? Are you willing to listen to that? And should it be investigated, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
Yeah, so normally when you vote on starting an impeachment inquiry, you have some semblance of evidence or strong, showings of wrongdoing that rises to a high crime and misdemeanor. Everything that they've produced so far, and this is their own witnesses coming before committee, is just saying there's nothing here. And there's plenty on, Hunter Biden, and he's going to have his day in court, but he is not the president of the United States. And so, look, when we engage in this kind of political, gamesmanship, families like the one I grew up in, families like the one I represent, they're the ones who get caught in the crossfires, right? I mean, there is nothing being done because Chairman Comer and Chairman Jordan are hell-bent on proving that there is a likely vote for impeachment down the road. I would rather see the Congress work on things that actually matter to people back home. And that has gotten, that has just kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, is it requires, resources, taxpayer dollars to fund these sort of witch hunts. And if you don't have anything that strongly, supports an inquiry, and look, we've had Republican senators say there's nothing there. We've had their own witnesses say there's nothing there, yet they're pursuing it anyway, and it comes at a cost. And right now that cost is to the families I represent.
A couple of things I want to hit on before we have to let you go. You've been very vocal about having stolen Cambodian works of art returned to their rightful countries. And ironically, right before 60 Minutes had scheduled a story on it, the Metropolitan Museum decided to turn it off. All your calls and all the other congressional calls couldn't move them. Suddenly 60 Minutes says, we're going to expose you guys. And it ended up back home. Is it frustrating to you that the calls from Congress go unheeded in certain cases?
Yeah, so look, it's not a coincidence that, those 13 pieces of art have been returned. And I'm sure, I'm sure it was a combination of things. I do think as more of people understood that this is a big problem. I mean, if you asked me 13 months ago when we started this, quest for the return of the stolen art be returned to the people of Cambodia, I wouldn't have known which way it would have gone. I mean, the Met is a powerful institution. It's over 150 years old. There's a lot of, high-powered, networked people that are behind it. But they, they're taking artwork that has been stolen, and Douglas Latchford has been known now, so I'm expecting every museum that has his artwork to do the same sort of scrutiny. And we're not done yet, right? There's been 13 pieces that have been returned, but there's another item in the collection that has not. And certainly this is indicative of a more widespread problem. And so, yeah, it's an important victory, and I'm happy that it's been recognized that. This artwork needs to be returned to Cambodia, but I also think that it opens the door for more scrutiny and more accountability for other stolen art pieces.
And lastly, you caught some flack for a no vote on a motion to condemn anti-Semitism and what's going on around the country and the world regarding the conflict in the Middle East. Interestingly enough, though, your office, you issued a very strongly worded statement that kind of took me aback a little about anti-Semitism in America, and you specifically called out those 3 Ivy League presidents for their testimony. That get you in any trouble with your left flank at all?
No, look, I think something that we can all agree on is that anti-Semitism and the rise that we're seeing, especially in these last few months, it needs to be condemned unequivocally, clearly, urgently. We're seeing a rise on college campuses. We're seeing a rise globally, and it really is up to leaders to be very outspoken on this topic. And the university presidents, they missed the mark on their testimony. And if you watch the testimony, it's hard to come away feeling like they made people feel better or safer about their stance. However, since then, the case of the Harvard president and the MIT president, they've clarified their statements. They apologized. They vowed to do better and put resources into anti-Semitism efforts on their college campuses. And I'm going to hold them to their word and certainly monitor it. But, I think everyone needs to recognize that Jewish Americans, Jewish students, they feel isolated. They don't feel safe. And so they need to see their university presidents. They need to see leaders like me say that we condemn anti-Semitism and that we're going to do everything in our power to root it out. And so that's why we issued the statement that we did.
Those three college presidents obviously faced the very public backlash, but is their testimony indicative of a bigger problem in academia? Because I see this, nationwide to a large degree. There's been kind of the BDS movement, which very strong on campuses. There's been a blocking of speech by pro-Jewish or pro-Israeli activists where they allow others to come forward. Does academia really need to take a look in the mirror and understand how, you talked about educating people on anti-Semitism and the history behind it and whatnot. I almost feel like academia hasn't done that, because the young generation, to me in particular, people anywhere from 18 to 30 have decidedly swung against, what they say is Israel, but they throw out this word Zionists without, I think, understanding the history behind it and how that's the same language we were hearing in 1930 Europe.
Yeah. Look, so I do think that everyone, college presidents, any leader right, should be very clear-eyed. On college campuses, you have to have a safe environment for free speech. It is a pillar of our democracy. However, making people feel unsafe, people who are being who are locked down in their cafeteria or their dorm room because they feel intimidation, people who are getting physically intimidated or barraged on their campus while walking to class. That is over the line, and every code of conduct should be reflective of that. And it's on the university to make sure they're very clear about that. And this is really important. You can have views about the Israeli government, how they're handling, this war. But to say or to question the right for Israel to exist those are very different topics. And I think people have to be, very, diligent about how they talk about, this issue. And we have to hold people accountable for their words. They matter. And I think it was proven on that day as that day.
I think it's also important to point out that, and I take some pride in this, UMass Lowell has, I think, handled themselves very well. They're not at all like some of those Cambridge schools and whatnot. And you're not seeing these issues pop up here in the streets of Lowell, on the campus of UMass Lowell. So I think we should acknowledge it's not all of academia.
No, it isn't. It isn't all college campuses. And I think the folks who come out very quickly and clearly and condemn that speech, they set the tone. And that's exactly what needs to be done. This is not something where you can be wishy-washy. This is really important. What is really hard for me to understand, I think we've also kind of seen the statistic, especially in these last couple of months, of, under 25 years of age, 1 in 5, they don't know about the Holocaust. We have to do a better job. People have to understand the history of our world so that we can ensure things like that never happen again. And we're paying the price right now for that 1 in 5 not knowing just how serious an issue that is. So I think it's incumbent on all of us. And I am very proud of Chancellor Chen and Lowell writ large in terms of terms of us not having those issues.
All right, Congresswoman Lori Trahan, we'll cut it there. I've got to about my half-hour time limit. I appreciate you coming on in. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and I hope Santa's good to all of you, okay?
I hope so. I hope he is too.
All right, hopefully 2024 will be good as well.
All right, thanks, Teddy.
Thank you, and thank all of you for tuning in as well. That was our discussion with Congresswoman Lori Trahan, who always seems to come into our studios during the holiday shopping crunch. Till next time, everybody stay safe, and please remember, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place.